Good day and God bless. Welcome to Verses from My Car. I am Dana. The last time we did the summary and the introduction for the book of Ruth. Now this is actually a short story that kind of helps you get through the Bible on the book of Ruth. It was written by a man who used to preach here in London, Ontario, Canada before his death. He's written a few of these books and I'm going to try and get my hands on all of them if I can. But I find these kind of books very helpful. Some of this is actually going to be from the Bible and some of it is him explaining it. So, we will go with chapter 1, which is called The Poverty Requiring Redemption. Ruth 1:1-22. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to dwell in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The phrase "in the days when judges ruled" provides the setting for the book of Ruth. The Jewish people had rebelled against God because they didn't know him and had no consistent relationship with him. The events described in the story occurred sometime after the death of Joshua and before Saul was established as the king of Israel, a period of about 350 years. Israel did not yet have a king and had lost her moral compass and turned away from God. The Bible describes this dark period in Israel's history as a time when everyone did what was right in his own eyes, Judges 21:25. Because of the famine in Judah, they went to the land of the enemy for provision, as Abraham had done before them. Disobedience and selfishness produce a spiritual famine in our hearts and our lives, and we become discontent. There was no bread in the house of bread, Bethlehem, and there was no praise to God in the land of praise, Judah. Ellamec and his family left the house of bread and land of promise, backslid, and turned to the worldly things of Moab to seek satisfaction and relief from the famine. But instead of finding relief from the famine, Ellamec and his family found only loss and grief. The world never satisfies the famine within us. It only brings us more sorrow and loss. The name of the man was Ellamec, the name of his wife was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion, Ephratites of Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to the country of Moab and remained there. Then Ellamec, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. Now they took wives of the women of Moab, and the name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth, and they dwelt there about 10 years. Then both Mahlon and Chilion also died, so the woman survived her 2 sons and her husband. Ellamec was Naomi's husband. The name Ellamec means "my God is king," but it also comes from a root word which can also mean God, false God, demons, imaginations. The double meaning of Ellamec's name points out the dilemma of the Jewish people. God was their God and the husband of Israel, but they had turned away from him to embrace idolatry. "My God is king" is a fitting name for Naomi's husband, because God is the husband of Israel. Ellamec had turned his back on God by moving to Moab and allowing his sons to marry pagan wives. Ruth and Naomi represent 2 types of people, those who need salvation and those who need restoration. Ruth, as a Gentile, represents those who do not know God and need salvation. Naomi, as a Jew, represents backslidden believers who have suffered loss and require restoration. There are many reasons why we may have suffered loss and require redemption and restoration. Adam's sin has infected mankind, and the curse of sin has fallen on all of mankind. The sinful actions of others have brought loss to our lives. Our own sins and wrong decisions have resulted in loss. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had visited his people by giving them bread. Naomi had lost everything in the land of Moab, her husband and her 2 sons. She was left with 2 daughters-in-law, but no grandchildren. When she heard the famine was over and there was a visitation from God in the Promised Land, she began to make the long journey back to her homeland. A visitation from God is not in itself restoration, but is better seen as an invitation from God to begin the journey of restoration. Therefore she went out from the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband. So she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, Surely we will return with you to your people. But Naomi said, Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go there with me? Are there still sons in my womb, and that they may be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters, go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, if I should have a husband tonight, and should also bear sons, would you wait for them till they are full grown? Would you restrain yourselves from having husbands? No, my daughter, for it grieves me very much for your sakes, that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. In verses 7 to 13, Naomi tries to dissuade her 2 Moabite daughters-in-law from coming with her to Judah. She tried to convince them to return to their own land because her situation was hopeless. She had no hope for herself and nothing to offer them. Would you wait for them till they are grown is an important question. In Jewish tradition, if a woman's husband died and there are no children, one of her husband's brothers would marry her and raise up the children in the name of her dead husband. The purpose of this law was to provide for the widow and continue the lineage of the family name. Naomi pointed out to her daughters-in-law that she was an old woman and posed the question to them, would they wait all those years for a child she might have to be old enough for them to marry? Naomi asked a critical question that is essential before redemption and restoration can take place in our lives. The question is, are we willing to wait patiently while God restores us? Naomi asked her question from the heart of bitterness and hopelessness in an attempt to point out the futility of her daughters-in-law following her back to Israel. But Ruth heard the question from a heart of faith, and it stirred hope within her as she responded in the affirmative. Restoration is a process that requires time and patience. The theme of waiting patiently in hope is one of the main themes of the book of Ruth. Lamentations 3:25-26 states, The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul that seeks him. It is good that one should hope and wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. If we want restoration in our lives, if we want to overcome sin, be free from bondage, and see our past restored, then we need patience and hope as God walks us through the process. Many Christians, unwilling to wait and lacking patience, choose to remain in Moab. In response to Naomi's question, one daughter-in-law, Orpah, returned to Moab, but Ruth chose to cling to Naomi, no matter what the outcome. Naomi was saying, in effect, give up any idea of redeeming your dead husband's name, return to your pagan gods, and marry someone from your own people. But Ruth refused to abandon Naomi. We see a glimpse of Ruth's character in her refusal to leave Naomi desolate and travel alone to Bethlehem. Ruth's decision to leave her people and follow Naomi to a foreign land not only reflected her deep love and devotion to Naomi, but also a willingness to believe in the God of Israel, who would not allow their lives to end in disappointment and failure, but in redemption and restoration. Then they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Orpah's name means gazelle and comes from the root word stiff of neck, obstinate back of the neck, and that is exactly what God saw, the back of her neck, as she left and returned to her own gods. Orpah represents the unbeliever who chooses to remain in the world. If we're content in the land of Moab, if we're passively content in the place of loss, we won't seek restoration. Ruth, however, displayed faith absent in Naomi herself. The relationship between Naomi and Ruth is very important in understanding how God is dealing with the nation of Israel. The Jews have lost their faith in God, but it is the Gentiles who have come to faith in Christ and who will lead them to Jesus, their Messiah. And she said, Look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave you, or turn back from following you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death departs you and me." When she saw that she was determined to go with her, she stopped speaking to her. Naomi finally stopped trying to persuade Ruth to return to Moab when Ruth said, "Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried." Ruth expressed her deep devotion and commitment to Naomi, the God of Israel and the people of Israel, by promising to spend her life there. Commitment is imperative if we want to see the process of restoration and redemption fully realized in our lives. Many people want a good end result without dealing with the sin that caused their situation. God has a redemptive purpose, but we need to journey with Him and find restoration. We often need to make hard choices. Ruth made a difficult choice, but it was the right choice. Now the two of them went until they came to Bethlehem, and it happened, when they had come to Bethlehem, that all the city was excited because of them. And the women said, "Is this in Naomi?" But she said to them, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord has brought me home empty again. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has afflicted me? Naomi felt bitter, forsaken, and grieved in her spirit. She blamed God for all her losses, and for the consequences of her family's rebellion against God. So when Naomi returned to Bethlehem, she made this woeful statement, "No longer call me Naomi, pleasant, but call me Mara, bitter." Not only did Naomi's possessions and family lineage need redemption, but her heart, imprisoned in bitterness, needed redemption. Although she referred to herself as Mara, throughout the book of Ruth she is referred to as Naomi, because God saw the redemptive plan He had for her life. We see our situation only from the vantage point of the present, but God sees the final result. The phrase, "Since the Lord has testified against me and the Almighty has afflicted me," indicates another area where Naomi needed redemption. Her image of God also required redemption, because Naomi saw God as her adversary and not her Savior. And that was chapter 1 from the book of Ruth. I'm not sure if you'll be able to tell and if I'll remember, but the bold stuff is the actual stuff from the Bible, and the stuff that's not in bold is basically the explanation of it all. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and we'll get to chapter 2 on the next visit. So we'll end this off, as I forgot the first time, with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever. In your Son Jesus' holy name I pray. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Good day, and God bless.